my name is James J., and I'll be teaching Creative Writing for the Arts, WRWS 3500, Section 851, the University of Nebraska at Omaha, Fall 2020. What I'd like to do today is I'll give you a little introduction about myself, as well as a general outline how the course is going to go, and then I'll address some finer points to the syllabus. So what I'd like to do is begin by reading a poem by Robert Bly. Typically, if we're going to be meeting remotely, but typically in a class where we meet each week, I start with poetry, short flash fiction, or something from an established writer that may have something directly or maybe more indirectly with what we'll be covering that week. So what I figured I would do is I'd start with some Robert Bly as a means of introduction. This is his poem called Stealing Sugar from the Castle. We are poor students who stay after school to study joy. We are like those birds in the India mountains. I am a widow whose child is her only joy. The only thing I hold in my ant-like head is the builder's plan of the castle of sugar. Just to steal 1 grain of sugar is a joy. Like a bird, we fly out of darkness into the hall, which is lit with singing. Then we fly out again. Being shut out of the warm hall is also a joy. I am a laggard, a loafer, and an idiot, but I love to read about those who caught 1 glimpse of the face and died 20 years later in joy. I don't mind your saying I will die soon. Even in the sound of the word soon, I hear the word you, which begins every sentence of joy. You're a thief, the judge said. Let's see your hands. I showed my calloused hands in court. My sentence was 1,000 years of joy. That's Robert Bly. That's from this collection here. And I love to begin each week with something like that. When you have a great poem like that, or you have a great piece of flash fiction or nonfiction, a lyric essay, it moves with a different intensity, different energy than all the other babble and commotion we get, all the other forms of language and communication that's coming at us nonstop. So it gives us something different, a different way to think and feel, potentially. So I've done that as the way I begin classes, and it doesn't matter so much if I'm teaching either at the University of Nebraska. I've also taught in the past at Northern Arizona University in Flagstaff. I've also done some different writing workshops at different community colleges, as well as in high schools. I did some different workshops in jails and local jails, that type of thing. I've also done some writing workshops in more kind of senior living communities, as well as at Celtic festivals and a whole host of places. And whether I'm in the university setting, or if I'm in on the lawn out in these Celtic festivals, or in the jailhouse in that setting, whatever it is, if I start by reading one of these poems, there's something with a different sort of energy. It shifts the classroom. So that's I'm hoping to transfer that sort of energy into our online medium, and hopefully doing that for us here today. So I start with that Bly as a means of introduction. He's also a poet that I very much admire. He was a farmer, or actually he's still around. He's quite old now, but he's still going. And he's a farmer from Minnesota originally, and went from those origins to have an incredible career. Mostly his poetry has had nonfiction on the New York Times bestseller though as well, and had a tremendous success there. He's also translated numerous writers into English, some for the first time. He's one of the first translators of Pablo Neruda, Olaf Hauge, all sorts of folks. So I figured I'd start with Bly there. And that also gives me a chance to talk a little bit about places I've taught before and what I kind of think we'll be up to. And so what I think I'll do is one of the things that's working remotely is that it's going to be hard to get that same sort of energy that we usually have in the classroom when we're all sitting there and there's 30 or so of us, and we're talking about whatever we're up to in our writing, whatever we've been working on, whatever we've been reading. It's hard to transfer that sort of energy, but we're going to give it a shot. I've always adhered to the idea that each potential problem could be a solution, and of course any solution given time could potentially be a problem. You can get in a rut. So what I'm doing is I'm taking some of the ways that I've taught before, transferring it to this online medium, and we'll see if we can try to generate that sort of energy. So there'll be some ups and downs as far as, well, I figure out the technology and that type of thing, and I appreciate your patience for that. But I want to try to get our best, our best effort in trying to figure out how we can adapt our online class to be useful for you. So I'm of the opinion that this is one of the most useful writing classes you can take, and that we'll be covering poetry, nonfiction, short fiction forms, and we'll be responding to different art forms. So we'll have a chance to view plays. We'll have a chance to consider different music, and we'll have a chance to look at visual arts as well, whether it be photography or painting. And we'll take those different forms and we'll respond to those different forms. I think it's incredibly useful as writers. It's also potentially useful for other classes you're taking. I know a lot of folks in this class are not necessarily creative writing majors. In fact, most folks probably have other majors. I actually think that that's a real advantage. I think that it's an advantage in that there are numerous writers that have had great careers that weren't necessarily on real linear academic tracks towards being writers. I think of someone like William Carlos Williams, who was a medical doctor and one of the most important modernist writers of the early mid 20th century. Wallace Stevens was an insurance agent primarily. He went on to write fantastic poems as well as essays on the arts, and there's all sorts of examples. Some of my favorite writers do a lot of other things, have a lot of their careers that in fact inform their writing quite well. So I think that there's a lot of potential with this class. It also allows you to potentially be ambassadors for other art forms, so that if you viewed an exhibit, there's something that you would just find incredibly powerful. Your written response is a way for you to become more confident in your voice and your engagement with that art form, and to also then share that with other folks and friends, family, whoever that might be, and get them to have that same sort of energy. So in some ways you become ambassadors for these other art forms. So I think it's phenomenally important. I'm hoping it's going to be one of the most enjoyable and useful writing classes that you have at the University of Nebraska. And I think that it will translate well into your other majors, whether you're an engineer, whether you're looking to work in the medical profession, whatever it might be. I think that there's a lot of potential here. That's my hope anyway. So what I'd like to do, normally at this point in class, I would start then going around getting to meet all of you, which unfortunately I don't get to do that at this time. We'll get a chance to hopefully go back and forth. I'll get to know you through your writing, but we won't do that in that same sort of way. But so I'll end up doing a whole lot of talking. Usually it'd be a lot more back and forth. But what I'll do right now is I'm going to scroll down towards the syllabus. So if you have that, it's been posted on Canvas. You can take a look at that in details. I would encourage you to read that in details, especially with the pandemic going on right now. And we don't necessarily know, there's all kinds of stuff we don't know in 2020. 2020 is about been adapting, improvising, and figuring out how to overcome obstacles. So I think that's what the syllabus will be a good guide for that, to see what you will be up to. You can plot and plan and work on time management, these type of things. So you'll want to look at that in much more detail. There'll also be a quiz on that syllabus, first quiz. The class, you read it in detail, it's an easy quiz, a chance to get some easy points. But I'm just going to start scrolling through. I've got the quiz loaded, I have the syllabus loaded up, and I just want to roll through that. So I'm just kind of reading down, if you've got a copy there with you, and rolling through there. I have some contact information, that kind of stuff. So if you do need to get a hold of me, shoot me an email at that email address listed in the syllabus, as well as I'm going to skip down to that required text area. Just have one book that's required, the Rose Metal Press Field Guide to Writing Flash Fiction. It's edited by Tara Massey, and I think it's a great collection that is available over at the bookstore. Right now they're not. You can't go get it, but you can order it online. They'll deliver it to you, and I think they're pretty reliable with that, from what I understand. One of the things I think that's fun about this is that in the title, this Rose Metal Press Field Guide, is that it is very much like a field guide. So if you imagine a field guide to birds or to edible plants in North America, whatever that might be, you wouldn't necessarily read it front to back like you would a novel. Rather, you might read the introduction, a little bit about how it's working, and then you'd hop around as need be. It's got that feel to it. So we'll hop around. I'll have some reading assignments for you that I'll also post in this weekly module. And we're not going to start our first assignment won't be page 1. We'll jump in maybe a quarter of the way through and kind of bounce around, that type of thing. In the same way that if we can imagine a field guide for, like say, other things besides writing, right? Other things like, as far as like birds, mushrooms, whatever it might be, we'll bounce around in the same sort of way as it seems appropriate. There also, that second part in the required text, there'll be numerous other reading assignments that will be available and distributed electronically. I'll post, I think most everything on that will go on Canvas. I'm pretty sure about that. There might also be some YouTube links, that type of thing. So we'll get that all taken care of. I'll have quite a bit of other items to post as well, especially when we get to the poetry section. So I'll have a good bit there. I have a note on technology. The main thing is make sure you have access to Canvas. Make sure that you can potentially download things from YouTube or at least interact with YouTube, and that should do you pretty well. But getting to that Canvas and being able to look at the weekly module is absolutely essential. There's no way around it. One of the things that when we were deciding whether we would do this class online the way we've done it or try to do it remotely where we meet up, decided to go with this more remote option, which makes it tougher to workshop and other things, as I said before, as far as how to translate the workshop energy into the video screen. So that's the downside. The upside is that it should allow for easy technological engagement. You should be able to get that taken care of. If you can't, one of the things, there's the student ITS, the sport there, and that would be a good place to get started and see if they can help you out and make sure that happens. Do that early, right? Get started with that early because it's going to be essential. You don't want to fall behind. So I'm going to scooch through. I have a note on attendance. Things are a little bit different, obviously. As I mentioned before, I've taught in all kinds of places, whether it's the jailhouse, the colleges, the universities, high schools, whatever it might be. And all that time of teaching, I have never taught during a pandemic, and I don't think anyone else has either, at least in the last 100 years. So things will be a little bit different. What we're going to do with this being an online course is that each Monday I'll post the module and what will be up to that week. Also in the calendar, the longer writing assignments, I'll have those posted. I'll have things in calendar as they pop up. I'll get those in to you as quickly as I can and as far as in advance as I can. One of the things I do like to typically do is I love to be able to get some early sample writing, see what you're up to, what you're interested in, and then I'll adapt the class based on either certain patterns I see or either information I think you should have and you may not know yet, or either just areas of interest, whatever it might be. And I'm not going to be able to go back and forth in that same sort of way, but I still want to get some of those early writing samples from you, and we'll adapt. We'll make it work pretty well. But in a lot of ways, we won't have that attendance that if we were meeting in person. But each Monday, I'll post modules with what will be up to that week. You can think of that as class starting, and get on those things, right? Your Mondays might be loaded up either with other classes, either obligations to work or family, whatever it might be. So maybe Monday's not the perfect day for you to start viewing videos and reading and that type of thing. Maybe it's Tuesday, maybe it's Wednesday. That's okay. That we have that flexibility. But what I would encourage you to do is don't wait till Sunday. Get on that thing. Get on that thing early. See how it fits in with the rest of your school obligations as well as personal obligations, job obligations, that type of stuff. Okay, so that's that note on that. And I'm going to scroll down a little bit to the general information. As I mentioned before, we're going to be working with fiction, poetry, creative non-fiction, and we're going to be responding to other fields of the arts, whether it be music, theater, visual arts, that type of thing. So I'm going to scroll through that a little bit. It gives you a good background for where the course comes from and what it's up to, but I've kind of covered that a little bit. And so I'm going to scooch down to the part where I have the vision and voice and champions and citizens. I've started to touch on this a little bit, but I'm going to quote here William Butler Yeats, W.B. Yeats, who was a great Irish poet, won the Pulitzer Prize in Literature, and absolutely, he's the person I actually ended up doing my master's thesis on his work, and he lived during incredibly troubling times. He started writing in the 1890s and did a lot of sort of mythic type of poetry, poetry that dealt with Irish folk tales, that type of thing. And I think he would have been content doing that. However, there was World War I, or as they call it, the Great War. Then there was the Irish War for Independence. There was they increased British occupation and presence in Ireland. All sorts of troubles that he couldn't be neutral about, or simply reside in Sligo and not engage with. But even with the tough times that he saw, and he was always a champion of the arts, and went on to have an incredibly long, successful career. And Yeats said, "Out of the quarrel with others, we make rhetoric. Out of the quarrel with ourselves, we make poetry." I love that sort of idea. One of the things that people oftentimes talk about is it's good to write about what you know. Right? So you take that way you can know your own voice and what you have an interest in, that type of thing. Sometimes it's hard to figure out what you know, and sometimes you can, especially with all the other noise and babble, as I mentioned before, that goes on in our day-to-day lives. So trying to figure out your own voice and what you know is also a part of what we'll be doing with this class, and we'll do that by writing in different genres, and we'll do it by engaging different art forms, and that sort of friction will hopefully help us figure out what it is that we know. And so I mentioned old W.B. Yeats there and talk about him a bit. So that's what we'll be up to, and I hope you read through that in a little bit more detail. But I really do think that this, I guess my assertion is that I think this is going to be one of the most important classes writing classes you'll end up taking, and then I'm going to spend the next 15 to 16 weeks trying to prove that to you. So that's what we'll be up to. On your side, I would ask that you kind of be open to that, as far as you might be used to writing fiction. That's your thing. You've never written poems before. Be open to giving those a shot. That might be your thing, right? You might be used to writing that sort of lyric essay or short nonfiction pieces. You've never done flash fiction. That's just not in your wheelhouse. Give it a shot. We'll see how it goes. Okay. So I mentioned also my teaching style in there. I think that's worth looking at. I've been talking about that a little bit and yakking with you about that. So I'm going to let that go by a little bit. I am looking forward to this semester, as much as I say it's going to be different to get this class done in an online format. But each problem is a potential for a new solution, right? So that's what we're going to be looking at. And the main thing I would say is that usually it's easy to be much more adapted and quick and to read responses, what people are interested in, what they're not interested in, and make those adaptions. What I'll need from all of you is if you're having any sort of trouble either with the reading or the writing assignments or these type of things, or if it's a little bit outside of your wheelhouse, you're not sure where to begin, and you've done all the reading and you've done the writing prompts and gotten started and you're still not sure where to go, email me early. Okay, get a hold of me early. We can figure it out. I won't be able to have that sort of impromptu conversations with the class as a whole and make adjustments. So I'll be relying on you to let me know where you're at. Okay, and that, to go back to this idea, and I'll say it several times, get started early, right? Get started early so that if you do get snagged, you can let me know. Okay. Writing assignments and grading. So it's writing course. I believe that one learns writing by writing. I went to the University of Montana's MFA program. That's where I studied writing that was established by Richard Hugo, who was an old Boeing mechanic up in Seattle for a long time before he went on to establish this writing program in Montana. And he would always make the assertion that one learns writing by writing. You need to do the thing. It's hands-on. And we also read all kinds of things, and we'll be reading stuff. I think some great examples throughout the semester, and that is essential as a writer. But that's almost something different, I think, too. I would read. I mentioned William Butler Yeats. I quote Jane Hirshfield in there, two of my favorite poets. I would read them even if I wasn't a writer. It's just a joy to read those great writers. And so I do that for other reasons. I do think that we can learn quite a bit as writers, but I think there's also at some point we don't just read. We need to get our hands go, start writing, get our hands going, get our hands dirty with the ink, as it were, or at least the electronic ink. And so that's the writing program that came from, that style. And so, and Hugo incidentally had a great collection of essays called The Triggering Town about that. We might cover that a little bit about halfway through the semester. So I think that by writing, we start figuring out our thoughts, our feelings, and how we respond to the world around us. And this is the way that we're going to engage in these other artistic forums. How we write about these things, I think, is best accomplished by getting it down on the page. We look to great writers we admire and read and study them for craft and technique, as I've mentioned. And I think we should do that. It's certainly enjoyable. But at some point, we need to take the pen to the paper and give it a go. So to that end, our formal writing assignments will be, we'll write 2 flash fiction stories. At least one's going to be in response to a visual arts in an exhibition. We'll write 3 poems. At least one's going to be in response to music and one in response to a visual art form. Meditation or reflection essay based on a theater performance. And that's going to be one of our nonfiction components. The other one will be a meditation or reflection essay based on a public reading. For all these assignments, please only turn in the writing done this semester. I know that a lot of you have had previous writing courses, so let's do stuff that's fresh, that's new. There's no point in rehashing old stuff. You've already done that. That's a good thing to revise, but I'd like you to write something new for the semester. Also, with pandemic going on, one of the things that's tough with this course is that usually you get to go to an art gallery or a theater performance, whatever it might be. It's going to be a little tougher. I've got all sorts of backup plans, though, so that we can do that online and do that safely. And so we will adapt that. I'll have all the particulars coming out. Like anything with 2020, plan can seem obsolete and dated within a week. So I'm not committing to real specific things in that syllabus at this point, since it has to last 16 weeks. But yeah, we'll figure out how to adapt and make that so that you can view these other art forms and engage in these other art forms the best we possibly can and do so safely. So grading wise, 30% of your grade is going to be based on what I call participation. Under that, it's basically going to be our weekly modules. That's the attendance part. We'll also have a chance to do some feedback on peer writings. I believe there's about 30 folks that are registered for this course. It's a pretty big course. I'm not going to do if you've been in other writing workshops where we read everybody's writing and get feedback to them. I think there's too many people to do that, and I think time-consuming wise, it would be tough online. So I might do kind of some smaller groups. I might figure that out based on who's doing what and what our final numbers end up being. But basically, we will have an opportunity for some feedback on peer writing. I think it's important to see what other people are up to, and it's also a good way to learn as well. We'll get to see how your valuable commentary comes through on online discussion boards. I'll do the same thing. We're going to be doing some readings. I'll have some discussion boards up, and then we'll have a bunch of little quizzes, that type of thing. Basically, if you've read the assignments, should be pretty straightforward. I'll try to do multiple choices and that type of thing. But yeah, the main thing is to get a chance to read and see what other folks, what other professional writers are up to, and to work from there. And let's see. So that's going to be the 30% of your grade will be mostly that. And so that's a big chunk. If you tune in each week, each Monday, you do the module, you knock through whether it be a quiz or whatever it might be that's loaded up for that week. That's 30% right there. Let's see, 10% of your grade. I do think we're missing that part where we're back and forth, that type of engagement. This is 10% will get a chance for me to at least see each one of you doing a little bit of reading. So 2 of your writing assignments, what I'm going to ask you to do, one will be one of our first flash fiction assignment. The other one will be one of the 3 poems. And what I'd like you to do is kind of what I'm doing here today, is just put together a recording and upload it, and that will be about that. So something that's a good, strong draft that you're turning in, and I'd like to see you do that, because part of literature, whether it be poetry or flash fiction, whatever it might be, is reading it aloud, and it should be hold up to being read aloud multiple times, right? And that way, it's especially I think like with poetry, it's designed for the ear. And so I want to hear it aloud. I want to hear your voice also. Gives me a chance, at least a little chance to meet you a little bit more. So I would like to be able to do that. That's going to be 10% of your grade. 40% of your grade, so there's a big bulk of it, will be based on the formal writing assignments, those writing assignments I mentioned before. And then the last 20% of your grade will be based on the final portfolio of your revised work. One of the things as writers is we're continually coming back, reworking material, chances are our first draft is not the best draft, right? So we'll cover some techniques for revision and how we can get that to listen to that writing and see how to make it better. So that'll be the last 20% of final portfolio that'll be due at the end of the semester. And so as I mentioned before, if you stick to the modules, you stick to the reading, you check it in weekly, you'll probably do pretty good in this class. I think you'll be all right. If you're getting stuck, email me early. Get a hold of me early. I'll also do office hours on Fridays. I'll have the Zoom meeting open if anyone wants to check with me Friday mornings. The details are in the syllabus there, and I think that's a good way to also check in and see how you're doing. But I think you'll be okay. I'll also talk a little bit. I'll do a separate video on time management. It's easy to get overwhelmed and to get bogged down either on certain parts of the assignments that maybe aren't particularly useful. And it's also sometimes if you wait to the last minute, instead of it being enjoyable reading, it can really be a chore. Once it becomes a chore, it's hard for your mind to be creative and to work with something, right? So time management is going to be absolutely key. It's always key, particularly during pandemic. So grading scale, it's a standard stuff for A, B, C, D, and Fs. Let me see. I also have some notes too. It's worthwhile to check out the academic integrity part, some of the official part with cheat and plagiarizing, all that kind of stuff. There's no need for that, but if that does happen, I would take care of that appropriately. Please don't. There are people waiting to get in this class. I think that it's an enjoyable class, and I think it'll be very useful for you. So doing the reading on your own, doing the writing on your own, giving it your best effort is where you get the best reward. And there's just no way of shortcutting that. So I also have a note on counseling. I always put a note on counseling on there. I think that all sorts of things pop up in our life that can be difficult to deal with. This is one of those times, as I said, in particular. So the UNO Counseling and Psychological Services Center, I mentioned that. So if there's something going on, that's a good resource. So you may as well take advantage of that if you need to, by all means. I also mentioned, as far as the official writers workshop policy on written work, one of the things with those formal assignments is that we all expect that it'll have no more than a handful of grammatical errors. We're going to follow standard grammar, and it's absolutely key, right? We're at a university level, 3000 level course, have to do that. So I know we're used to texting and shorthand and all that kind of stuff in our modern babble. I don't want to see any part of that. Actually, it's distracting and it's not useful. So make sure that anything you turn in is complete, grammatically correct sentences, all that type of stuff. So if that is the case, if there is something that you turn in and it doesn't follow that, and it's more the text shorthand or that type of thing, I'm not going to put any sort of grade on it. I'll just mark as ungraded. I'll give you a chance to redo it. But yeah, make sure that whenever you're writing in this class, that it's your best professional writing. Okay. And let's see, the Writing Center. If that's the same thing, if I'm saying, man, this thing is full of a bunch of sentence fragments and run-on sentences or whatever that might be, and you're not sure exactly what I mean by that, that's okay. The UNO Writing Center is there. They don't necessarily write the papers for you, or they don't write the papers for you, but they're there to cover those sort of grammatical issues, that type of thing. Okay, so they can help you out with that for sure. And so I mentioned a link to that. I do also have towards the end of that syllabus, I've got numerous things that have to do with social distancing and facial coverings, that type of thing, the requirements for on campus. We are meeting remotely. That doesn't affect us. I put that in there though at the end because if you do have other classes that are on campus, it's good to know. So it's just another thing that could be useful for potentially for other classes. So that is all I have on the docket so far for my introduction and syllabus. So that I am looking forward to getting us started and getting us going. And what I'll also do now at this time is I'll wrap up this part. I'll put this in our first week's module. We'll have a quiz on the syllabus. You'll want to read that syllabus in detail on your own. And then we'll also get our first batch reading assignments going. So we'll have that flash fiction, the Rose Metal Press Flash Fiction Field Guide. I don't like to mark on the pages as far as with the ink and that kind of stuff, but I do have all these notes and shorthand, that type of thing that I keep with those. So we'll have some reading assignments from that. We'll get started on our writing assignments as well. And thank you so much, and looking forward to the semester. Bye-bye.